Hi everyone, how's it going? I just thought I'd get this off my chest because I've got a reading to do today. But there's something I want to talk about. Hang on. There's something I want to talk about before I decide to do my reading today. There's this online creator called Kojo Safo. He's a doctor and he has ADHD. So he was talking about the difference between ADHD and depression, and what he noted was that ADHD sufferers develop slower than neurotypical people. So I decided to look this up, and what I discovered was that people with ADHD do not fully develop until 35 years old. So people who are classified as neurotypical, their brains settle down and they age at the age of 25. People like myself with ADHD don't develop until age 35. Now, I want you to put all of this in context, all right? Now, I'm going to use myself as an example of all the different ingredients that can lead to low functioning or low to medium functioning people, like all the ingredients that it can incorporate into that. First off, right? Black woman. I'm not just a black woman though. I am specifically of Caribbean descent. The Caribbean is a rich and incredible group of islands. The diversity is rich, the culture is rich and beautiful and all the rest of it. But you got to remember that a lot of us came from slavery. So there's intergenerational trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation from slavery. That's the first thing we've got to get into. The result of that is that a lot of our community, even though we're very community orientated, tends to be very toxic in that community orientation. Children tend to be treated like property. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Children tend to be treated like property. And a lot of people within communities like ours, have to settle for meanness that comes with, we're used to people giving themselves entirely to one another in the community. But the consequence of giving so much of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, all that tends to be emotional meanness. So there's that to contend with, right? And then on top of that, being a woman, you have more expectations put on you. You're not so much raised up, but dragged up as a woman, especially if you come from a Caribbean community. You have all the problems of the world laid on you. You have to set the standards for everything, even though you're not given the respect that comes with it. So you have to live by higher standards. So add that to it. As somebody who's queer, even though, truth be told, I've never really cared about what anybody thought of my sexuality. I didn't give a shit. Being queer, you also, if you don't have the right people around you, you also stand to be ostracized, even though for me it was never really that much of a problem. Because I don't talk to my family much about that. And, honestly, I don't care what anyone thinks about my sexuality. It's got nothing to do with them. I don't really care about what anybody thinks of my sexuality. I don't care. So then there's the queer factor, which, it creates this whole dynamic of how people treat you. I was bullied for being queer. I just didn't care like that. I was going through so much. But yeah, it was like you get bullied for being queer, and then on top of that, you have all these feelings running around inside you. You tend to be more emotional than your peers, so you're being treated as if you're immature, even when you're a child and you're supposed to be immature. So you've got all of these factors coming into play, and that's just with me as one individual. You've got all these factors coming into play. You've got toxic family members who treat you like an enemy because they're giving so much of themselves to you, and they don't take any responsibility for what they give to themselves. Okay, so they're mean, they give you all these things and they're mean with it. And then, as a woman, you have all the weight of society put on you with none of the respect that comes with it. And then on top of that, being queer, you get bullied for being queer. When you're black, you don't just have to put up with toxicity from your own community. You have to put up with systemic racism, sometimes even social racism at the hands of other people. So you've got all of these factors whirling around. Like I've only just mentioned the basic shit here. I haven't even gone into detail in my individual life yet. So all of this is going on while your brain is being developed to somebody with ADHD. Now, add to that, on top of the abuse and everything, there's the results of the abuse. There's the borderline personality disorder. There's the hormone imbalance. There is schools and educational systems that are unsympathetic, that are largely results focused. And even when they try to help, they don't know how to empathize properly. And there are still microaggressions that come with their treatment of you as a disabled person. Add that to the mix. So all of that, again, basic stuff. And I haven't even mentioned being a TI yet. I haven't mentioned that, like, the lower end of being a TI, because of all the TIs in the country, I have like among the lowest in terms of radiation, in terms of like electronic torture. I have among the lowest in the country. So everything that I just mentioned on top of the ADHD, I haven't even begun to put all the other layers on top of it yet. So just as a normal person with ADHD, especially when you're marginalized, when you have all these additional things piled on top of it, where is the space for you to heal? Where is the space for you to get the care that you need until it's too late and a lot of the damage has already been done to the potential that you could have had as a person? Okay? I'm just mentioning all of this. That's just as a normal Black British second generation woman who's queer. That's just the normal shit I'm mentioning. I haven't mentioned everything else now. I ain't mentioned how targeting affects you as well, right? Let's get into, but seeing as I'm touching on this, let's get into how being a TI affects you as well. You're being physically tortured. A lot of TIs, if not like some TIs, if not a lot of TIs, have been targeted since they were children. So at the same time your brain is developing, you're being subject to all kinds of abuse, not only as a result of the background that you've come from, which is highly marginalized, but also as a result of you being abused psychologically and electronically since you were a kid, or at least during a time when your brain is still developing. So on top of everything else that you've got to deal with, you've also got to deal with the targeting. You've got to deal with people weaponizing the symptoms of ADHD. You've got to put up with people violating your privacy and bragging about it. You've got to put up with death threats. You've got to put up with being debilitated when they feel like you're getting too cocky. You have to put up with your family members being murdered, on top of everything else to do with the ADHD. How much do you think that affects your brain development? This is what I think. I don't think that TIs are simply, I think the choices of TIs are a bit more complicated than just saying, oh, you know, somebody could easily pick you if you piss them off. I think there are a few qualifications that are needed in order for a TI to be picked. The first thing is that they have to be a sacrificial lamb for somebody who is powerful. I'm getting to a point. Don't worry about it. They have to be picked as a sacrificial lamb for somebody powerful or relatively powerful who wants to go up the ladder. They will nominate you as a sacrificial lamb, right? So that's the first qualification. I believe that the second qualification of being a targeted individual, especially when you look at all targeted individuals and how we function, I feel like a big part of why we are selected is because of the ADHD. I think that's a big part of why a lot of us are selected, is because of the ADHD. And if our brains develop slower, it means that in the minds of people who are torturing us, We're more malleable. We're easier to program through the weaponization of everything that we are as people. Because they want to weaponize us towards a certain direction. If they can synthesize mental illnesses within us, cause mental illnesses within us, and use our ADHD to do it, it makes it easier for them, because ADHD can easily be misdiagnosed. It's been misdiagnosed 1,000 times. So I feel like having ADHD, if we're not chosen for that, then it can make the gang stalking easier. It can make the weaponization easier. It can make the torture easier, because we're still very emotional. If we, past the age of 25, are still not fully developed yet, and we're still more emotional in our decision making and more subjective in our decision making, then it stands to reason that we'd be easier to torture and easier to manipulate now. There's a very big reason why after a certain age, the physical pain starts to ramp up. Because when you're younger, the psychological torture is how you are made vulnerable. It's the chief way in which you're made vulnerable. So with all the factors I just mentioned, what kind of impact does that have on your mental health? What kind of impact does that have on your ADHD symptoms? And remember, you are talking about a person who, although I am marginalized in every other way possible, when it comes to being a TI, I am among the more privileged of TIs. Not because of the money that I have, not because of the status that I have, but because I am among the lowest to suffer from electronic radiation. I'm among the lowest to suffer from that. So as a TI, I'm among the more privileged people, because my electronic torture, even now that my brain is arguably developed, I am among the lower end. So if I'm going through all this, whilst my brain is developing at the lower end of targeting, then you can imagine what kind of impact it would have on an ADHD person or an ADHD TI who is going through significantly more electronic torture than me, significantly more brutality at the hands of psychiatry. This is just me. Look at my social media and how all the factors that I've talked about have affected me. Check that out, and then go back to see all the other TIs that have suffered significantly more electronic torture. That to me explains a lot about a lot of TIs' behavior and why TIs do what they do. It's not just a simple thing of, we're tortured so we don't know how to communicate. No, there are pre-existing conditions that might have been there that that gang stalking is likely to have been exploiting. And it drastically, when you put it all into context, the reason I'm doing all this and the reason I'm putting it all into context is that as a TI or as somebody who's marginalized, if you're acting up, it might not be entirely your fault. You have to take accountability for the way you treat people. There is no excuse for acting like a villain. It doesn't matter what you go through or how neurodivergent you are or how long it takes for you to mature. There's no excuse for you acting like a villain. There's no excuse for you hurting people when you know you're hurting people undeservedly. There's no excuse for that. But putting it in context, I believe it helps you understand, not only as an ADHD person, but as a targeted individual, it helps you understand exactly how much responsibility you have. If you are only responsible for what you do, then all the factors that have been responsible in arguably making your mental health worse are things that you are not responsible for. And there are a lot of fucking factors. There are a lot of factors, and that is what I want to drill into targeted individuals today, especially those who have ADHD. There are a number of factors that are actually manipulating you as your brain develops. rendering you vulnerable as your brain develops so that you can be reprogrammed into what your gang stalkers or your perps want you to be. And I feel like, again, having ADHD and having that slow brain development is part and parcel. I don't know if it's part and parcel, but it's certainly, I think it's either synthesized by the torture. I think it's synthesized by the torture, honestly, some of it, because they can create all kinds of illnesses. I think that the ADHD is synthesized by the gang stalkers, just like paranoid schizophrenia can be synthesized by the gang stalkers, because it's all about your frontal lobe. It's all about your frontal lobe, and it's all about affecting your frontal lobe. So I feel like it is synthesized in targeted individuals in order to make us more vulnerable. That's what I think is going on. I've got to take back being selective for your ADHD, because I think it might be synthesized. And if it's synthesized, you have to consider how all the different aspects of your life are more impactful to you and your mental health than you think they are. And I think that's what I tried to get across very inarticulately. I just tried to explain to you through my own life how external circumstances can contribute to making your life significantly worse, how it can contribute to making your mental health significantly worse, how it can contribute to the same frontal lobe dysfunction that they're trying to cause in you in order to make you more vulnerable. All of this comes into it. Okay, and I think personally that ADHD and paranoid schizophrenia are synthesized. ADHD through the frontal lobe, and paranoid schizophrenia through the CR1 part of the brain, which is like further back. It's kind of more in the middle. So all these things are synthesized through torture and through psychological warfare. And bear in mind, whilst you have that ADHD, all your traits are being used against you in order to paint you as crazy and in order to misdiagnose you deliberately. So I really want you as a targeted individual to think about all the factors of your life. Think about how all of that is affecting your mental health. And then understand that whilst you are responsible for your own behavior, all the other stuff around you that is contributing to making your mental health worse through your torture, that's got nothing to do with you. That's got nothing to do with you. And I won't lie to you, the realization that a lot of things were not your fault as an ADHD sufferer, as somebody with BPD, and especially as somebody with a targeted individual, the realization that you've been made to feel like so many different things are your fault, it is going to make you extremely angry. It is going to make you extremely angry, and you have to navigate that anger. You have to think to yourself, okay, I was responsible for a lot of what I did as a person, like the intention behind what I did, I was responsible for that. But then when you really start to think about, you know, how much people were actually making your health worse deliberately because they didn't actually want to do the work to better themselves. They just wanted to do it vicariously through you. The reality of that is going to make you very upset. And it's a matter of you sitting with that anger and sitting with that upset and allowing yourself to express it in a safe and healthy manner. That will kind of lead you towards the path of healing when it comes to your ADHD and borderline personality disorder and your existence as a targeted individual. You will be extremely angry when you realize a lot of the things that happen to you are just not your fault at all, and you were made to feel like they were. It's gonna hit hard, and it's gonna be very angering, and you're going to realize that a lot of people do not have guilt for what they did to you. They don't have guilt for what they did to you. They don't have remorse from what they took away from you, because for them it was just Tuesday. They don't have any guilt or remorse for that. That's another thing that you're going to have to live with. A lot of people mistreat each other with like zero remorse, and then when things get really, really bad, they tend to put on this pity act like, oh, it's such a shame, such a shame. Like the whole time they were contributing to that. So the first thing you have to accept as somebody with ADHD, BPD, and as a TI, the first thing that you have to accept is how your environment played into your mental health and played into your reaction to things, because you can only react off what you know. Okay, so first of all, you have to take into responsibility how your environment impacted on that. The second thing that you have to do is recognize your anger at realizing that a lot of fault and a lot of blame has been placed on you where it didn't belong. And you have to deal with the anger that comes with that. The third thing you have to do, if I can remember the third thing you have to do. I'm not gonna remember. So that's the first two things. I feel like the third thing I'll probably remember when this video, when I play this video back, I'll probably remember the third thing. So it's recognizing all the factors that have contributed to your mental health. The second thing is realizing that a lot of other people's reactions were not your fault. And, you know, thirdly, dealing with the anger that comes with that in a healthy way, because you are going to be very, very angry. And that's just at the people who actually care what they did to you. And which brings me to my fourth point. There are a lot of people who are not going to care about what they did to you. They're not going to care about how they treated you. They're not going to have any remorse about what happened. The closest thing that they might feel to that is shame. And the reason is not because they don't know it was wrong. They knew it was wrong when they did it to you. They knew it was wrong when they treated you a certain way. They knew it was wrong when they did you dirty. And another thing that you have to accept, they knew how shitty it was. They knew. They just didn't care. So you have to deal with all that. And then you also have to deal with the fact that because they did it in numbers, you're the bad guy in their eyes. Because they did it in numbers and they have other people backing them up. So you have to come to terms with all of these things, knowing now that your brain didn't develop until your late 30s, knowing now that any toxic environment that you were in contributed to that, knowing now that not only did your toxic environment contribute to that, they didn't learn jack shit, and they don't care what they did to you because they don't care about you. So you have to kind of understand all that in your own mind, and understand, along with the ADHD symptoms, how that has affected your life. And then once you kind of come to terms with the fact that people don't care, how are you going to care about you? Because if other people don't care about you, then why should you care about them? I'm sorry. It just is what it is. If they don't care about what you went through and how they contributed to that, then why should you care? This is a time where you have the opportunity to rebuild, and you have the opportunity to make your life into what you want it to be now. You have the opportunity to do that. You have the opportunity to decide for yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? Now you have all the information at your fingertips, and you've accepted the truth about the way the world is. What kind of person do I want to be now? How do I want to manage my ADHD symptoms? How do I want to manage my BPD systems if you have BPD? How do I want to manage the PTSD that has been left behind through the trauma that was inflicted on me, along with the mismanagement of my neurodivergent state? So what kind of person do I want to be, knowing what I know now? And that's the reason I made this video. Again, I explained it very inarticulately. I took forever to get to the fucking point. But the fucking point is that, one, you have to recognize that on top of you being tortured, you're most likely neurodivergent. Second thing is, you have to understand how that neurodivergent state affects you and how it affects your day-to-day life. And you've got to stop distrusting the neurodivergent thing. You've got to stop distrusting it, because if these symptoms are out there, then the likelihood is that those symptoms were caused. And if you understand the symptoms that were caused in you, if you have ADHD and that was artificially caused, which it can be, you need to understand the symptoms so that you can manage them. The third thing is understanding the way people treated you wasn't right, understanding that a lot of people, if not everybody, was selfish and ignorant, and they're selfish and ignorant now, and they're probably still terrible people who did not care how they treated you. Fourth thing is that once you get past that, you have to express your anger in a healthy way. And then after you've done all that, number 5, you've got to decide once and for all who you want to be. Because now you know what the issue is. You've got ADHD. You're a marginalized person in one way or another. If you're not marginalized through your race or your sex, you're marginalized through being ATI. Okay? So you've got to understand your marginalization. You've got to find ways to manage how to live your life around that. You might be marginalized, if you're marginalized due to your body type or, anything. If there is anything about you that is marginalized, and I'm going to include being a targeted individual in that, then you need to learn how to manage these things. When it comes to your ADHD, BPD, CPTSD, PTSD, you've got to learn how to manage these things. Because the torture will invariably leave you with some form of torture that affects your emotional regulation. So you've got to learn how to deal with these things. Third, you've got to come to terms with the anger of knowing that a lot of people probably ruined your life or played a part in ruining your life, and they do not care. Because there are other people joining in with it. They do not care. So you've got to just consider the fact that they don't care, and the most that they'll feel when it comes to you is shame, not guilt. Accept it. And you can be angry about it, but that comes to the fourth thing: express your anger in a healthy way. And fifth, of course, is who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? You've got to make that decision. Now, I've repeated myself a lot. Do I have to go, or do I have another point I need to make? I think I have to go because I really want to eat. But yeah, I'm going to leave some links about ADHD, BPD, and CPTSD, about the basics of that. And, I'm just going to leave you with that. I've got to get something to eat, man. I've got to get some food in my stomach because this is just not working for me. I'm so hungry. My God. I haven't eaten all day. I am so hungry. I just got to eat something. So I hope everything made sense. Because I get on camera and I don't really know what's said until I've said it. So I just have to watch it back. And if anything makes sense, then good. If it doesn't make sense, then cool. But I just felt the need to come online today, based on finding out how much more slowly the brain develops when it's neurodivergent. I just had to come online and share my thoughts and share how the world has basically been complicit in being completely arse backwards about everything they've handled. Just completely arse backwards in their handling of anybody even remotely different to them. And just managing that, you know what I mean? But yeah. I don't know what I'm supposed to say here, but I'm gonna leave you with that for now because I'm hungry. I wanna eat. So, for those who are on Empress Justice Tarot, I will see you for the Rohini New Moon reading. Okay? What the fuck? I'm sorry. There are these flies here. Well, there's one fly. It's getting on my fucking nerves. So, I will see you at the Rohini New Moon reading. I hope all of this made sense in the meantime anyway. So, we'll talk soon. Peace and blessings. Wait. Hang on. What did I want to talk about? Oh, yeah. I'm going to leave a link talking about OCD as well. I'm going to leave yeah, that's what I forgot. I'm going to leave a link also talking about OCD because there are certain TIs who suffer from that too. I think that's also a trauma-based thing, but I'm going to leave the links for those 4 disorders. And You know, just in case you didn't know, neurodivergent people tend not to mature until about age 35. So yeah, there's that. I think I have to go now. So yeah, I'll leave those links in the description so you can have a look at that, and we'll talk soon. Peace and blessings. Bye bye.